Now we talk about the whole world see the true about the fake spiritual leadership. The anointed, some people don't lead the religious dressing in the road, dripping in the scriptures, hiding their fans behind them. Come a time when the marks turn just asleep and shattered. When does the same crowd once cherished illusions turn to share the wreckages in hollow, and suddenly everything makes sense. Studies have shown charismatic manipulators often rise of the spiritual leadership, but not because they're anointed, but because they're adaptable predator skill in emotional manipulations. Spiritual theater, they know how to cry, cue spin, and quit into the sermons. Sprinkle control enough scriptures make taste holy. Here's the plot twist they didn't see coming. You didn't die under the deception. You grow immune and not entirely were cut up the truth. They carry along the truth. They once called a rebellion or jealousies. A spiritual offenses. Turned out you were not the problem. You were the prophecy. The buck up, because today was whispering. We are explosions, diving deep into the how counterfeit leader manipulate, mask, and monetized soul. How the chosen one become the living proof. Not even the head dressed in holy robe could stop the diving destiny. And don't worry, sprinkle a little humor, because sometimes best way to hear spirituals is clown. Yeah, laugh at and how hard they try to juggle it and calling while wearing the crown. Let's begin with the number one, the fake leader. Wasn't the leading the war, mining soul currency, were not leading anyone, they were extracting what everyone look like a guidance, actually spirituals exploitation. They didn't want followers to grow, they wanted people shrink just enough to stay dependent every time you share the testimony and struggles and dream. They're mentally stored and not to pray over, but it's find a way to use it. And that wasn't being the pastored, you were being the minded, your vulnerabilities wasn't safe in their hands. It was currency, and the more broken you were, the more valuable it become. The platform study your hungers of the God. Weaponized, watches how respond affirmations, how quickly you move when they said God told me. And they turn out into their system, control, masterate your pattern like a marketers study buyer behavior. Once they figure out the formula they sold is right back to yourself in the form of stages, prophecy, false mentorship, and manipulate. Altar called wasn't the ministry, it was the soul. Truckling with the spiritual dress code, and they knew how to stir the emotion. They cry at the pulpit and the precisions, knowing exactly fallen of the tear, would trickle the offering laid call out hidden the pen, that they ready to knew the, all because you confessed a week early during the counseling session. They parade discernment in public to keep illusions diving inside alive, and you Christians your own. Discernment were doubting them, not to realize they were running a script script one you knowingly have the right truth. They didn't build a flock, they built a feeding group, and only test because the people they fed on like you had so much fight that they could dim you a light and still look powerful standing next to you. But now the light are on, the whole world see. You weren't just a victim, you were the evidence of they were never a leader, they were just good at pretending. Be one of the informed of people. 2. Spirituals hungry, and 2. Christendom menu number 2. They study your wounds and simulate wisdom. They didn't get their wisdom from the God. They got it from the watching you breathing every time. And you open up about your pain and your past and your private battle. They were taking note. They were not listened to. Healing you, they were gathering the material truth. It's their so-called deep revelations were nothing more than recycled piece of your life, published up and preached back to you as you had doubted it straight from the heaven. They didn't carry the divine insight. They carried the stolen knowledges dressed up in the prophecy. When you sat those private meetings and pouring your heart out, you thought you were planting seed or healing. What you were really doing was the handling over the sacred information, and someone who was already praying how to twist into the next sermon and concerning sanction was someone else. They study you, the wound, not because they care about you recovery, but because they need the flesh ammunitions to maintain their knowledge of the authority. Your heartbreak become the research of your Christians, become their taking point. They were never anointing. They were just excellent on mimicking images of real experience. Watch you battle and follow your breakthrough. They turn in your silent word into the public performance to keep the crowd mesmerized and walk for the wire, because true pain has sound like a car to fake. They had access to you, to yours. That's why they could cry cue. They could cry on cue, use the exactly word and that cut deep, make people feel seen, and because you had already shown them blueprint of it. At the end of the day, they didn't build their so-called wisdom, intimacy with God, but they built its own exposure to your deeper place. Why it couldn't sustain stolen oil, never last. It burned dirty, fast and fast. It eventually exposed who was carrying real fire, who was just rehearsing the motions. Now the world isn't just seeing the truth about the Lamb. They are realize how many of their miracles inside were nothing but the reflection of someone else's real fight. You, the one they underestimate, were the true well and living waters. They keep secret drinking from the number of 3. You were the blueprint, not their student. You were the never their student. You were their blueprint. From the beginning, they were not trying to pouring into your, you were trying to copy, and they try to copy your everything. And they present to public every so-called revelations, every style of speaking, even the way they played, all had a trace of you. You saw they were mentoring you prepare you for you next level. So, but what they were really doing was the starting you, and they could be themselves with platform, not a look, but identically didn't want to teach you how to be great. They want to learn enough from you to fake greatness themselves. The worst part is they admired you in secret while criticizing you in public. They watch you in natural abilities to connect your depth, your sincerity with God, and they knew they couldn't manufacture like original, so they took a shortcut. They started dressing like you, coding things. You said private, stealing your idea, your style, your language, and sprinkling into their performance. So no one would notice the switch, but you noticed. Over time, you could feel something about the way they move, start to feel the early familiar. They weren't being inspired by you. They were trying to become you. And when they realized they could never duplicate your spirituals, that's when the attack started. That's when the criticism and the gossiping in the subtopics. So about how you were getting ahead of yourself and not ready to become to the surface, because deep down they knew they were standing off the stage, bare with a brick. They stolen from you, your house. They couldn't handle the fact that no matter how many pieces of you they imitate, the power was never transferable. The oil was never for the sale. The anointing was never there to borrow now. The community sees the crack in their characters. Obviously, they were not raising up the leader. They were harvesting a piece of the identical people to mask their own emptiness. And you the one secretly, you the one they secretly envy, copy. They stand still original, but you still standing original. So still carrying the kind of presence cannot be duplicated, drain the number four. They weaponized spiritual language, enslave, not empower. They turn the word meant to uplift into the chain of the meant to hold you down. Humility, submission, obedience, and this were not spiritual to them. They were tools to control. They knew that the people craving and spiritual step were often desperate of guidance, and they capitalized. They would stand before you using this word like a weapon twist. Their meaning to make you believe that your loyalty to them was your only path to the God favor. They didn't care about your growth or your freedom. They care about your compliance, submit to the process they said. But what they really meant was submit to me. They call it humanities, but all they were doing was teaching you how to silence your voice, ignore your instinct, and turn off your discernment. Every time you questions them, they drew the word obedience in your face, making fear a story word. And resisting God himself, like knew you want to please, want to serve. So you slid the desire against you, and it wasn't about you. You become the better person and growing in spiritual maturities. So about the maintain the position of a power they used to list sacred term, blue, and the line between the selfless and service, self-sacrifice for the sake of their ego. They would twist their Bible, spin and the truth, and come to speak the behalf of the God, or while making sure you feel that your identity, sense of the world, and the word tied to them. The truth is they never want you free. They want you trapped in the cycle dependency. Make sure you believe you couldn't do without them, and in doing so, they keep you stuck, believing you were being the humble when the reality you were being. So control, they knew how to speak the language of liberations while practicing the technique of the cult of leader. Wasn't a spiritual growth they were after. It was your submission, your silence, and your surrender to their will. Number 5, the community didn't wake up because of their evil. They wake up because of your endurance, the truth. They didn't come crash down because of their light. Come to the light because they kept standing, and when they tried to black you while they were busy twisting narrative, setting trap, and playing the game, you keep it sharp. You didn't bend to their manipulation, and you didn't count the face of this criticism when the world was watching you. You didn't crumble. That's when the mask started to sleep. Wasn't their downfall? Their downfall to open people's eyes? It was your unwavering presence. So if you lay enough, shadow your way wouldn't dim your life. But they didn't account the fact that your light wasn't dependent on their approval. They tried to break you down. The whisper attacked, undermined tactics, and every time you try to plant doubt, you respond with steady and resilience, and left than the battle you showed up. Every battle unshaken if you were built from something they couldn't destroy, unexplainable calm. You carried peace, refused to leave your soul no matter what. Through at your mad people kitchen was really going on. Endurance became the sermon, your consistency and the evidence, and your growth undeniable proof. No matter how hard they tried to break you, they couldn't touch the truth. Inside, your people began to see the strength wasn't just physical, it was spiritual, and why they expect. Both under the prejudice, they witnessed a quiet uprising that was far more powerful than any scandal of. They couldn't spin wasn't their evil and cracked foundation was your integrity. It was the way you rose above, attempt to manipulate your everydays and continue to be the despite game they play was another brick in their world. Deception, crumbling, and they couldn't see all the time, but the community was watching, and the moment you refused to break their truth, explodes in the most powerful way. You didn't just Bible, you thrived, faced the attack. There was real revelation. Number 6, the prophecies judgment while hiding their own skeleton and stood at the pulpit, shaking their head, righteous. Indignations point to the finger at you, so-called sin, or why carefully. The guard in the skeleton rattling in their own closet. It was perfect smoke, and the mirror act preach the loudness about the faults of the other. No one will noticed. 50. You are hiding behind a closed door. They had a talent for calling out everyone else's mistake, while continually forgetting to take a good look. They own their hypocrite hypocrite. Hypocrisy wasn't just subtle, was your faced disguise as divine judgment. They would loudly prophesy about God and rap about judgment that was coming for people living in sin. They never mentioned the dark secret they were keeping hidden. Beneath the surface, they preach about purity, holiness, and obedience. Their own actions were far from the holy. Instead of addressing their own brokenness, cast spotlight. They deflect false prophecy, hoping no one would notice how they were living a double life. Archer was nothing but the platform projection. Every sermon about your unrepentant hearts was just a distraction. Their own shame. They used you as the scapegoat, escape facing the consequence of their action. They want to point out their flaw so loudly, they noisy. They would down the whisper of their own secret for a while. Workers' communities couldn't see through the smoke screen. They feared because they were so caught up. The skeptical of judgment and the truth has were slipping through the crack, no matter how tight you try to. The sealed away the more they prophesied about God, vengeance, and the more their own hypocrisy. Hypocrisy became the undeniable. They were one living in secret sin, the one with the need of the real reckoning, but they couldn't face their own demon. They project them onto your judgment was nothing more than a mask. They are guilty. The more they hide behind, the more abusive they become. The world will see to the act. The smoke cleaning and their corruptions being exposed. What is truly number 7? They didn't have enemy. They create themselves. They didn't build the enemy. They manufactured them. Anyone who refused to bow down to their narrative, anyone who couldn't control become the target. They are labeling a machine if you dare to. They challenge the world, and even just a little, you will suddenly catalyze of despair and rebellion of even demons. Label words were not about the truth. They were about the power of the moment you question them. The moment you push back against their agenda. They were not just a dissent voice. You were throat, not because you were wrong, but because you were the truth. Made their facade look fresh. They knew that the easiest way is silence of the challenges was turn the community against them. So they cast if us rebellion and you'd be land, and if you didn't fall in the line, become a target. Their smear campaign and the community often hungry for the direction would take the bear. The moment you spoke the truth, you wouldn't heard. You were branded, demonized, and dismissed. They didn't have the real enemy. They create them out of the fear. Anyone spoke the clarity, authority, pulled back the curtain, exposed the fact. They were nothing more than a puppet was no deal. String wasn't just about your behavior. It was about the fact that you dare to expose their wickedness when the Christians, their decision, their teaching of their control you, were not just disagreeing. You were undermine the grip of power, and their eyes was unforgivable. So they did was a power-hungry leader when they feel trapped and stuck at first. So twist the truth, play the victim, and make sure you were painted as the problem. You were not just trapped because you were wrong. You were trapped because you were right. You had courage to see through their lies. Stand up and their manipulations call out the truth. They didn't want anyone to hear, and doing so, you become the enemy. They never expect someone who couldn't be controlled, someone who wouldn't be silenced, someone who explodes the ring of the illusions. True leader was number 8, leap of the trauma. They pretend here though they weren't just business of healing, and they were the business of exploiting your pain. Every time they come into them with a wound, they didn't offer you the true feeling, true healing. Offered a brand ad and just enough keep you coming back. Your trauma wasn't a burden. They saw it lived was the resource. They minded, they knew. As long as you stayed broken, you would keep seeking. As long as you keep seeking, they keep collecting, build an empire on the back of the people who were hurting, not because they wanted help, because your vulnerabilities made them powerful. Their brain was built on your brokenness. You think you want you here become the whole, but strip of your dependency every time. You made the progress. Saboteur find a way, make sure you didn't get too far ahead. Sprinkle just enough of the wisdom. Prayer keep you together, and never enough to actually empower you to work on your own healing. It wasn't just a win of them. It was the trait. Hear the less you need them. It was the last thing they wanted. They didn't want to see you free. They want to see you stuck. But however, their prophecy, their prayer, they are turned into the pain, into the profit margin. Every tear you shed was something to them. It's every confession, every moment. So vulnerabilities was commodities could leverage, keep you emotionally tied to them, keep their platform growing. Growth wasn't just bad, was them. It was directly challenge their power. If you hear, you see, you become whole. You wouldn't need the lamb anymore. Without the dependency, they lose the influence. You just broken enough, keep you coming back, fully healing, never truly moving forward. However, business model number 9. The people see now because the spiritual truth of the matter. Unlikable they thought they could bury you with their lie, shame, and slander, but they didn't realize was that every time they tried to make you down, something in you refused to step down. They use every trick in the book: spiritual gaslighting, manipulation, false accusation, trying to paint you and villain as the unworthy and broken, but spiritual truth inside of you, force made you unlikable no more. How hard they try to bury you every time they threw dirt on you, try to bury your reputation. Your purpose just to keep rising. It doesn't matter how many times they label you, they try to discredit you, twist you, but you would. Now we talk about the whole world see the truth about the fake spiritual leadership. The anointed, some people don't lead the leaders dressing in the road, dripping in the scriptures, hiding their fans behind them. Come a time when the marks turn just asleep. and shattered. When does the same crowd once cherished illusions turn to the shared wreckages in hollow, and suddenly everything makes sense? Studies have shown charismatic manipulators often rise of the spiritual leadership, but not because they're anointed, but because their adaptable predator skill in emotional manipulations. Spiritual theater, they know how to cry, cue spin, and quit into the sermons. Sprinkle control enough scriptures make taste holy. Here's the plot twist they didn't see coming. You didn't die under the deception. You grow immune and a not entirely word cut up the truth, they carry along the truth. They once called a rebellion or jealousies. A spiritual offensive. Turned out you were not the problem. You were the prophecy. The buck up, because today was whispering. We are explosions, diving deep into the how counterfeit leader manipulate, mask, and monetized soul. How the chosen one become the living proof. Not even the head dressed in the holy robe could stop the diving destiny. And don't worry, sprinkle a little humor, because sometimes best way to hear spirituals is clown. Yeah, laugh at and how hard they try to juggle and calling while wearing the crown.